Epic Loop Radio. Epic Loop Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Epic Loot Radio. We got a roundtable of epic proportions to talk about the news, and I'm very curious as to everybody's thoughts. I could guess a couple of thoughts, but I'm curious to see if we got anything good out of this this week. But let's go ahead and go around the roundtable here and introduce everybody. Let's start with Lono. Thank you so much for jumping over with us today. Who are you, and where can people find you?
Well, yeah, I'm Lono. Reforge Gaming is the best place to find me on Twitter and on YouTube, and glad to be here. This is I haven't done something like this in a while. It's been really tough with the schedule to do some of the podcasts.
All right. What about you, J-Dub?
What's going on, everybody? You guys know where to find me. Go on Twitter at JDubCity16. If you want to catch me on YouTube at JDub4U.
All right. Kirk.
The at Warmer Gray is in my little name tag there. And yeah, check out my YouTube channel, What's New Video Games. Got some reviews up on the channel that need some love, so go check those out. They need some views real bad. But yeah, I put a lot of effort in those, and you might find a new game that you might want to try out.
And Mark.
Hey everyone, my name is Mark. You could find me at Mark Liberto on Twitter. Nice long Italian name. And Late to the Game on YouTube. I mean, I'm loud and I make games too, so that's how I'll describe myself.
Late to the game, first to the podcast.
Yeah. There we go. It's all right. Anyway, today we're gathered around to talk about what is perhaps the worst handled marketing campaign that they produced of this podcast. It was the literal worst case scenario because they didn't tell us anything. They confirmed basically everything.
Okay, thank you. I'm so glad that you actually think that. I was so worried.
Like this
I was so worried.
To be very clear, I fully support their vision of games being everywhere, right? So that, I think they're making the right moves for the long term, but what we got today was dog crap, and I'm going to keep it family friendly as the best I can.
Nothing burger is
not even a nothing burger. Yeah. Oh, only 4 games. Oh, but don't take this as a signal that it's going to happen. You know, more games are going to come. BS. Everybody's going to take that as a signal that more games are also on the table, and there's no actual announcements for the game that it's going to be. So it's still, and they were like, it's not Starfield and it's not Indiana Jones. I could care less because there's a huge catalog, and Xbox fans, in my opinion, they didn't get the value trade-off, right? I get it as a player. I'm like, this is great for gamers, but for the Xbox fanboy, like the diehard Xbox fanboys out there, what do they get out of this? And anybody just jump in and cut me off. I'm Italian, so I'll talk over dead air.
Well, I'll tell you this: the biggest thing I take from it, and shout out to Tom Warren, because he tweeted this out. He was like, Xbox chief Phil Spencer doesn't rule out Starfield and Indiana Jones coming to PS5.
He doesn't rule it out.
Phil Spencer said, I don't think we should, as an industry, ever rule out a game going to any other platform. So that begs the question. For one, there's 4 games that are coming, and those won't be the end all be all. We know there's going to be more. They spent 20 minutes just talking around in circles about nothing. They let this stuff fester for about a month, where they could easily just did a blog post on Xbox.com, or have another interview with Paris, Lily, or some of the other guys, right? And just kind of come out and just say exactly what it is. Or, hey, these are just some of our older games or our smaller games we decided to share. No harm, no foul. But that leads to something else. It's something that's bigger, right? And my worst fear was that they were going to come out here and slowly pull the Band-Aid off, but not totally rip it off. And that's going to lead, guess what? There's going to be a huge cloud over Xbox this year. Every single month, every game. Hellblade 2, we know it's coming in April, May. there's going to be a cloud over that game. There's going to be a cloud on every game that comes out going forward. People are going to potentially say, hey, this, we may get this game in a few months, or it may come to PlayStation next year. They never quashed any type of issue in any of the questions that we had. They didn't answer any of them.
I'm
Well,
gonna push back on that, J-Dub,
Yeah,
because
so was
she
I,
did ask
yeah.
him point blank if Starfield or Indiana Jones was going to other consoles, and he looked in the camera and said, no, not.
No,
Okay, those are
hang
two
on.
games.
No,
Congratulations, those
she
two
asked-
games.
It was about the 4 games, though. That was what was slick with
Yeah.
it. It's not Indiana Jones and Starfield. It's not one of the 4 games. He's doing interviews with Tom Warren saying, I'm not going to say never, because they're open to Starfield coming. They won't say they're not going to do it. He just said it was such a smart PR move to be like, oh yeah, the first 4 games, it's not Starfield and Indy. Well, nobody thought the first 4 games were going to be Starfield and Indy because it would take longer to port those. They're bigger.
Those weren't even part of the first 4 game rumors. The first 4 game, the rumors were Sea of Thieves,
which is coming.
That's
Hi-Fi Rush,
one of them.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush was the big one. That was the first one.
Yeah.
Pentiment potentially, and
then
I
either
even saw Forza. Being tossed out there.
Could be Forza, could be an unannounced.
I think it's grounded.
multiplayer game.
I think the 4th
grounded
game is
too.
grounded.
Yeah.
Grounded is definitely also a good choice.
But guess what? We're here talking about games that we don't know that they could have answered. They wasted everybody's time. They could have answered that, right? We would already know.
Yeah,
but we could all be wrong right now, right?
Sense.
We could all be wrong. And guess what? It could be Forza. It could be Halo multiplayer. It could be Gears. It could be any. We don't know. And guess what? We're gonna have to go for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, in the next months talking about this. And that's not good for Xbox. That's not good for Xbox.
I think we'll find out something next week, because there was supposed to be a Nintendo Direct this week, and I think Jeff Grubb was out saying that supposedly it's been moved to next week because of the Xbox announcements. I wouldn't be surprised if you see something on that Direct next month or soon from Nintendo talking about a Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment. And I also think how they phrased that question, Lono, it was very slick. How we said those 4 games, it was slick. But I also think it's indicative of the type of business model behind the games they're considering. The 2 small games, it's definitely easily Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment. Those are small games that can live better on other platforms to get more players to experience them. But the larger games, probably, he referenced community focus, creator focus. So I think, to me, Halo could be it, but I do think it's Sea of Thieves and Grounded, and that seems to be what the reports are hinting at now. And honestly, I think that makes sense for those games, because once they get another release on more platforms, then the player is going to increase again and gives them some more life, and maybe they have some updates coming down the road too.
Right.
Is Grounded still in early access?
No, it officially hit 1.0, didn't it? Yeah. The only thing I wanted to push back on what J-Dub said just a teeny bit when you're like, they didn't answer anything. We got to give them some credit. They did firmly say day and dates continuing for first party. That was a huge question mark for people. And they did firmly say, Sarah Bond said, the next gen console is going to be the biggest leap. So they're confirming they're making another console that will be high end. And those were 2 big questions. So I was like, okay, they did answer that. But I'm with you, Jay. They wasted a ton of time saying nothing but PR corpo nothing. It was like, it was the most non-Phil Spencer I've ever seen Phil Spencer be. I felt like he was nervous. It felt awkward. It was
he looked like he's been beaten up. And maybe he was sick, right? Like, because go ahead, Jay.
Let me ask you this. Okay, they said that now, and see here, and this is the credibility problem that Phil and those other executives have built up over time. What they say today, right? Like, we're going to try, and we've attempted to do this in the past. We've attempted to hold them to their words for that day and that time. That going forward, this is how it's going to be. Just 6 months down the line, for them to tell us something different. I'll reverse back a year from now, when Sarah Bond came out and said, these are the 12 games that you're going to be playing in the next 12 months. Well, and we only got like 3 of those games, right? The rest of them got canceled or delayed or for whatever reason. And they came out and apologized. Okay, well, we won't tell you. Yeah. At this point in time, all of their goodwill as far as holding them down to exactly to the T of what they said is kind of would be crazy to do that.
To your point, Brian, about him looking beat up, I think the last 2 weeks or so have been hell for him. Like internally, there's probably been so many meetings because of
Yeah.
this news leaking out the way people didn't want it to, and then employee population getting concerned. He did say that they had this planned, and I think it's why he said it since December. So yeah, I imagine the fact that you have something planned and then it comes out this way, you never want that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's just been torn apart from all kinds of angles internally. He's got to be tired from that.
Yeah.
But I honestly am not surprised by any of this. It is nothing to me. Like this is all this is what they were gonna like when Phil Spencer came out last May and basically said we lost the worst generation we could lose and we're investing in the Xbox ecosystem the way we did. Of course this is gonna happen. Of course they're gonna bring games to other people. Like I don't know. Part of me just almost doesn't care. Like in a way, like I want games to be in more places, but I don't know, them bringing games to other places, yeah, it just doesn't surprise me at all.
Lono brought up a good point. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Kirk.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, because like the point that Lono brought up about hardware, I think is really where I want to get everybody's thoughts now, because I argue that they aren't getting out of hardware, but here's the real thing. What does that even mean? The biggest technical leap, right? Like one of the things that I've seen Lono rant about, rightfully so, is the marketing behind the Series X and S. And I've even pushed back on some of those points, saying like it's also, I feel like PlayStation 5. Like when we saw 3 years into this generation that frames per second go from 60 to 30, like it really kind of feels like what's going on here, right? We were like 60 frames is so good. And some people will be like 30 frames is fine. It's like, no, like this is what they were really pushing more Microsoft than anybody else this generation. 60 frames, 120 frames, this is 4K, and I'm not going to sit here and expect that a console at $500 is going to do what my computer can do at 5,000. I don't have that disillusion that I see some people like make, but when it comes down to marketing, that felt more marketing to me than anything else, because they weren't then ready to kind of tell us more. It's the biggest leap in technology. That to me, as somebody who thinks on the technology side, I go, that to me sounds more like they're investing in their cloud infrastructure, which is what Satya Nadella has continued to say, that this is a cloud. We're a cloud company. Xbox is going to be cloud. What do y'all think?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If they played some kind of verbiage trick and it's not about the hardware being really strong, because that's what got my attention. I was like, oh, she said biggest leap. I'd have to go back and look at the exact verbiage, because
that's what she said.
If it's the cloud hybrid and that's what they view as the biggest leap, because they're going to be able to give you like 4K cloud gaming, oh my, no.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm
Lono, think about it, Lono. This is this 2 generations, right? Last generation, this generation, they've had the world's most powerful console. How has that helped them at all in the gaming space? When PlayStation has the better looking games, the better running version of the multiplayer, it hasn't really returned the dividends. And if she's saying, right, like you think she's saying they're going to make another world's most powerful console, that's going to fall on deaf ears. Nobody's going to pay attention to that, because you've had the world's most powerful console for the last 2 generations.
Unless it's like $800, then I might believe them. Like if it's egregiously priced, then I might actually believe them.
You know what? And guess what? And then they could drop another Xbox Series S type device alongside that, which will leave them in the same situation that they are now, right? And so,
well, Ginger and I got into that debate. I can't remember if it was on an Epic Loot Radio, or if we were just in the comments on one of our videos or whatever. But yeah, I was saying that I think that they need to drop an $800 high-end console that vastly outperforms and costs $100 or $200 more than the PlayStation to sort of provide that value proposition. I don't think that they can compete in the same lane as PlayStation. They need to make a device that is high end, that is closer to a PC for the people that want that, because otherwise, in terms of native hardware that runs native games, like what are you offering me as a console maker that I can't get from the other guys? And if you say Game Pass, PlayStation Plus is getting better every day.
It is.
It's getting better every single day.
It's a little bit confusing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, J-Dub.
I was just going to say just these 2 points. When you think of power, Xbox right now has 12 T-flops of power. It's the world's most powerful console. But then when you look at the games that really make your jaw drop. You look at Horizon Burning Shores. You look at, we just had Death Stranding 2 that everybody was gawking over, right? That's running on the PS5, right? Which is a 9 to 10 T-flop system. So people gawk over those games. They don't gawk over the 12 T-flop games, right? Because the games that generally Xbox shows us, like Hellblade, it looks good. It looks great. But I mean, it's 12 T-flops, and it doesn't really show off the power of the 12 T-flops. And we know it's probably going to get hamstrung like the rest of the games because of the Series S.
I would push back on that. I think Hellblade looks about as good as any video game has ever looked.
According to Digital Foundry, it doesn't.
I think it's good to take a step back, though, and to say that this current generation with PS5 and Series X, they're struggling hand in hand, too. And there's something to say about that as well, where the PS5, there was news from Sony just the other day that they're already viewing the PS5 near the end of its cycle, which I don't know what that means at all. But there's something...
That was an incorrect quote.
That's not what they said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was,
okay.
It was the middle, because we're 4 years into this generation in general.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Generations last between 6 to 7
It's just
years.
factually. Wait, is it 4? Is it 4 years? I thought it's only been 3.
At the end of this year.
Well, it's 2020.
Yeah, that's 3 years, Lodo.
Well,
yeah.
going
No,
into
If at the end of this year it's 4 years, that means it's been 3 years. We're at the beginning of a year. That's how years work.
Right.
I'm crapping on J-Dub, not you, Lono.
Yeah. It depends on the generations, right? A typical generation would be anywhere between 5 to 6 years would be typical, right? But if we go back in the 360 and the PS3 era, though, it lasted a little bit longer. And I mean,
it depends on the success of the console, right? I mean, and think about...
And we had COVID, that ultimately, I believe this generation should extend 3 years, because those first 3 years, I mean, there was lack of supply and developers got hamstrung. So I don't know. I don't know. You know, we know, you know, 9 times 10, we got a PS5 Pro coming. We got a Switch 2 coming this generation. We got a Xbox Series X all digital coming. Like, I don't know. Will these things extend the generation into 2028, 2029, perhaps 2030? I don't know.
And I think that's important, right? Because again, if the PS5, they admitted sales are struggling, they didn't hit their mark, they're kind of disappointed in it. And I just think that says something about the overall gamers' appetite for what we're getting now from these two players. There isn't a lot of innovation, right? And to your point, Kirk, about having an $800 premium console, I think that'd be a horrible idea for Xbox, because those people are going to go buy a PC instead.
Right.
And it makes no sense, because the console business is so small too, right? They're much better on creating an ecosystem where they can sell their games on PC and all kinds of other devices. Where that device, I mean, it'd be cool. As a tech guy myself, I'd love to have it. But
I mean, there's too many people that went out and bought an ROG Ally for me to think that to agree with you. I don't agree with you. I think if they make a high
there's only
console,
there's only about 3 million between the ROG Ally, the Steam Deck, and the Lenovo.
Well, yeah, but then
that would be a failure.
You don't need to make a bunch of them.
But are you gonna sink all the R&D? You know, $1 billion worth of R&D just to sell 2 million units?
To that point, would you rather do that, or would you rather have other manufacturers take that risk for you and you just put Game Pass on there? And again, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing already.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to return to Mark about the comparisons between the two in this generation and struggling. Yes, they are struggling as far as.
It's so funny. 54 million is like, oh man, it's not. That's like, man, I'd kill to sell 4 million of anything.
Yeah. So Sony, PlayStation, by any chance of any stretch of the imagination, is not struggling at all, right? They are. Matter of fact, what happened is they projected, which was far exceedingly. They were too. I guess they were too. I guess they got a little bit too greedy, and they thought, and they set their projections extremely high, which was 25 million units sold in 2023, and they ended up selling, I think, 23 units. So they're going to miss their projections by 2 million. But the problem is, I mean, which is, I guess, a good problem to have, is that is still far exceedingly more than any PlayStation has ever in history. Yeah. That is, matter of fact, they sold more units last year in 2023 than Xbox did the entire generation. That tells you how good they're doing. But again, you know, it just like Square Enix, right? They're never happy, even though the game sells 15 million copies, because their projections are just too high, and they just believe that their product is just so good, and they need to do double that. So that's an internal thing.
Yeah.
PlayStation doesn't have an issue selling hardware, whereas Microsoft does. They were selling the Xbox Series S for $139 this holiday. They were selling the Series X for $349, right? They basically cut the price in half, and they still weren't able to win NPD. They still weren't able to sell out of the consoles, and so that's a big struggle. And the problem is, if you don't have great games, high quality games, and consistently, then people won't buy into your console. But they need people to buy the hardware so they can get the revenue to keep making the game. So it's the chicken versus the egg for Xbox. And I don't know if they'll ever be able to.
No, they sell the hardware at a loss. So that's what they're talking about. Is they're saying we're gonna expand beyond the hardware and give people ways to interact with our ecosystem and buy games and play games and invest in in-game stores and things like that. If it's a first,
they've been doing that. They've been doing that for the last 2 generations, right? They've been pushing the Samsung TV, they've been pushing the cloud, they've been pushing the cell phones and all this stuff.
We haven't had the tech for that. I mean, that's why Google Stadia failed. It's just like
but Game Pass has been a thing since when? 2018, 17?
They haven't had xCloud on phones since it's only been 2 years.
I think the main point though is they need to have revenue to invest in their platform, and I don't think they look at hardware as the source of that revenue. I think they see the $40 billion PC market, which is I'm pretty sure bigger than the console market, as a way to extend that, and they also see the other half of the console market as a way to extend that as well. And you are right, if you don't have innovative games coming out on your hardware, you're not going to incentivize people to play there. And I think, again, when Phil had that interview in May, I feel like they admitted that they lost the worst console generation to lose in PC, PS4, Xbox One, and they're pivoting while still maintaining some aspect of that Xbox brand. I don't know.
Seems like such a half measure though, like with what we saw today. So
because you wanted them to double down on
they
going
have a unique strength,
further,
right? Because when on the last podcast where we talked about it, it's like, I don't think Xbox is done. I think they actually they're just going into the blue waters to fight a whole different fight where this is how things were. And today was not that announcement, in which essentially they just kicked the can down the curb. And that's why I'm frustrated with how they handled today. But with the question that I cannot rectify, and I get the pushback because what I'm going to say will generate questions from y'all most likely. But what is the future when you have these devices coming out? Yes, maybe the Rogue Ally only sold 3 million, but that's actually a really interesting offering coming in and at a high price for a handheld. But when you have these devices that do play your PC games that can just hook up to your TV, Steam is one of this for a long time. What room, what space, what avenue does the console, essentially a single use kind of device, have in our future when all of a sudden that becomes real competition? Just like we said, PC games, Sony has already announced there more PC games are coming to the PC. Helldivers 2 is an absolute, I think, must buy, must play kind of game. So if you haven't had a chance to play that game, it is really good. Sony, I think, did a really good job. They're working on some of the issues, but I think overall, holy crap, more of that, please, Sony. I think that would be great. But then all of a sudden, imagine somebody's comes out, I am another manufacturer. They if they license the operating system from Microsoft and you could boot up your Rogue Ally, you have your Xbox dashboard. Oh, and then it turns out you can run Steam. Okay, cool. I think that's the wild card. That's the unique advantage that Windows has, that because they have Windows running on the Xbox, but it's a restricted OS. PlayStation tried to categorize the PS3 as a PC, but
the Xbox has Microsoft has tried that before with the multiple operating systems. They tried that with their Surface tablets with the version of RT and all kinds of different stuff
like that.
Yeah. The stuff just didn't work. So I just don't know if they'll ever get it to work like that. It seemed like it would be the perfect thing. Just put the Xbox OS on every device and just let that be that. And guess what? You still get your little cut of the fee of the operating system that's sold for every device. And you get the Game Pass that comes along with that device and things like that. I'm gonna be honest. I just, for the life of me, I just don't understand how the world's richest company, when it comes to gaming, hasn't figured this stuff out yet. We're like I said, going on 4 years into this particular generation, and they're still trying to find their identity. They're still trying to find themselves. In us as console gamers, invest $500, $600 into these consoles, even more with accessories and games and stuff. We invest all this money to these, and that's supposed to be for the long haul. Well, the system launched in 2020. This will see me through 2026, 2027, or whatever. So we invested into that. And a couple of years in, there's all these major changes, and here we are now with some more changes, but they're constantly trying to find out where they want to be, and what does that mean to the average gamer, someone
Yeah.
like me, right? You making all these changes and stuff, but how does that stuff benefit me? I don't game on the cloud. I don't
It
game on all this
doesn't.
stuff.
It doesn't, J-Dub. And if I can jump in, like, all these conversations and all this planning and scheming and strategizing and whatever that is, internally, that's what's come out. That's why all these news articles have happened over the past couple weeks. All of that is sort of angling at taking advantage of this broader new frontier and capitalizing on it, and somehow that making Xbox relevant and prominent again. When the reality is that PlayStation goes out and makes a box that's appealing, that's a brand that people trust, that resonates with people, that they want. It's desirable. It's sexy in a way. The console, it looks sexy. It's not just a rectangle black block, and the games on it they're exclusive, they are special, they are premium in terms of the quality, in terms of the availability, the accessibility on other platforms. You can't play it on PC until 6 months to a year later, if at all. That may change, but right now that's the case. And like, they have stuck to that and just hammered it so hard for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years on. Just, we do this, beating Xbox into submission. And Xbox is trying desperately to get out from under that palm. They can't do it. Like, they think that they can expand into these new horizons, and that's why they have nothing to say. Like, they had absolutely nothing to say today. Like, it basically amounted to, we're still in third place, we still don't have value prop, and we're evaluating and assessing that, and we're always looking for new ways to make things more appealing for Xbox gamers and put your games every. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about that the way they didn't care about it in 2013 when they got out there and said, "Oh, you can do this instead of DirecTV on your Xbox." Nobody cared about that then. It's like they're still repeating the same habits, the same patterns. Gamers want games. Living room console gamers want games on their box. They want the best games, and they want all the games on the box. And Xbox can't deliver on that, so they're trying to find another way to get into people's living rooms and to get into people's mind share. And I mean, as we saw with Stadia, like, people don't want to make that jump. Not the majority of people. It's just not appealing. People want what they want, and like, PlayStation has established that they can deliver on what people want, and it's a system and it's a methodology that works for them. It's a brand and strategy that works for them. And Jim Ryan got a bad rep, but boy did he deliver on that strategy, and boy did he deliver for PlayStation gamers. And Xbox just, they're trying everything that they can to sort of take advantage of markets that do not have a proof of concept. They don't have a proof of concept yet. And they think that they're going to go out and prove that because they went and bought King, and they've got all these, resources and all this money. I don't know that there's this swath of people that want to take advantage of all that. Like, I think that people want what is already available on another platform brought to you by another company, that Xbox can't do it as well. And that's just the way that it is.
Well, and the thing that I said as soon as it was over, I was like, if I was a hardcore Xbox fan, I would have not left that podcast feeling very satisfied, because all they did primarily was just repeat the talking points they've said for years. Play anywhere, cross play, cross save, Game Pass day and date. And it's like, okay, great. Like, you kind of convinced me these are value points 3, 4, and 5 years ago. If you're trying to affirm and really assert what is Xbox right now, when Sarah Bond said, we want people playing on Xbox to feel like they're going to get the world's best games. And then she just started randomly like bullet point listing stuff like Game Pass and cross progression. And they were like repeating themselves. There was something awkward about it. It was like they didn't have that much to say, because I really do feel they are very much so trotting out the marching orders of Microsoft.
Oh, yeah.
And they're trying to push that through that funnel and lens and, PR, Xbox talk speak. They're trying to say, well, Microsoft wants us to do this. How in the world do we position this and still sound like Xbox? Like I said, it was the most non-Phil Spencer. I always praise him. I'm like, he's a wordsmith. He's great in interviews. He's got great presence. He's always been so good. And this, I was like, this doesn't feel like Xbox. And it also doesn't feel like Phil Spencer. And it also just didn't feel like they were fermenting this idea or cementing this idea of like, you want to stay with us. It was like, we're going to take 4 games and put them out elsewhere. And then Diablo's coming to Game Pass. And then chat told me, she said the greatest technical leap on the next console. Well, that could be anything. That's not a performance leap. So now I'm thinking, well, golly, like I could see them making a killer handheld. I think that there's a handheld market potential growth, like Kirk's saying. It's maybe it's not proof of concept, but I think there's potentially huge growth for handhelds in the coming future. And I think Microsoft could be a killer competitor in there, because if they get that Surface team cranking out an amazing handheld, I would buy it.
People also buy multiple handhelds. Like that's one of the things that when I see people praise Nintendo numbers, like I go, yeah, Nintendo, yeah, they're selling great. I'm not dogging on the numbers, but it's also there's a hidden factor in terms of like how many gamers are actually that. I own multiple Nintendo Switches. Now I would have only owned one Nintendo Switch if it hooked up to the television, but because it's a handheld, just like with the DS and the Game Boy and before, I buy multiple of their handhelds. And so them and Xbox go in that direction. But then the question is what does that then do differently that I can't get from the Rogue Ally or the Steam Deck, which actually then plays games that aren't available to me? Like why step into that market and then come in with both hands tied behind your back?
Yeah, I do want to before I lose my train of thought, I do want to try and spin some analysis out of this this absolute dust bowl tumbleweed of a 22-minute nothing podcast, and pull something out of my ass. Which is that, again, to harken back to, I want to draw a parallel with the 2013 announcement and how damaging that was to the Xbox brand. The idea that they were going to become about more than the traditional sort of narrow scoped idea of gaming, that they were going to branch beyond that. And that was going to be appealing. That was going to be something that was going to be in demand, that people wanted for whatever reason. And it wasn't. Like the entire gaming populace, at least console gamers, pushed back on that. And they said, we're not interested in that. And the Xbox brand suffered irreparably. And so what changed, I went on a whole, monologue about this last week, which is the only reason why anybody might actually know who I am. What changed was in 2020 or 2019, I can't remember, when the consoles were about to come out, they started changing their messaging, and Phil started talking directly to gamers and talking directly to the maligned, aggrieved Xbox base and saying, hey, we're going to go out, we're going to buy a Bethesda, we're going to compete, we're going to make some great games, we're going to make Fable, we're going to make Hellblade 2, we're going to make Halo really good, we're going to put Starfield exclusive to our platform, we're going to make sure that that's the game of the generation. We're going to do all these things, we're going to get back in this race, we're going to it'd be like every year in football or whatever your favorite sport is, people who are watching, it's like, this is our year. Dallas Cowboys fans, this is our year. We're going to the Super Bowl, right? Like, let's go. And you need that. Like, if you just lose constantly, the morale just sinks. And so their messaging changed, and it was about, we're going to get back to basics. We're going to make good games that are going to come on our platform, and it's going to make our platform desirable. It's going to make our platform a good experience, a good product to have. That's what we're going to deliver on. You can expect it. Post market, we're come buy our console, and we're going to deliver on that. And now 3 years later, they failed. Okay, they failed. Let's not get it twisted. They failed. Redfall, one of the worst games to come out, like from first party Xbox ever, especially if we're talking like AAA.
Glad you clarified first party, because then I was like, there's been a lot of other games.
This isn't Kong Skull Island, Brian. This isn't Lord of the Rings Gollum. But it's in the conversation with those games, which is ridiculous. The way that game was being propped up, the way that they were showing trailers of that game like it was going to be, the second coming of, I don't know, Borderlands meets Stranger Things or whatever. And then Starfield comes out and it's fine. Like, it's middling. It's fine. It's an 8. A lot of people gave it a 7. I think it's an 8. But, it's not pushing the boundaries that they claimed it was going to. And then after those two, like, that's it. That's all they had. Like, that. Like, it's like they went 8-8, and they're like, we should just trade all our players and go, 1-16 next year. I mean, it doesn't make any. They're just pivoting right back to the 2013 messaging of, we'll try other stuff. We're gonna let PlayStation do that, and then we're gonna go. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Like, people want Xbox to be good and to be comparable to PlayStation. Nobody ever asked them, except for Brian here, to like go do something else and offer some sort of other alternative value proposition that nobody wants. If those people want that, they're on PC already. Like, the brand of Xbox, the Xbox was created in the vacuum that exists because Sega could not stay in that space. So Xbox got involved.
Was afraid of Sony being under the television and dominating the living room.
That was why.
What's happening right now? What is happening right now? And what can Xbox do? They are helpless. They are powerless with all their money and all their resources and all their good premium games that are coming to the platform.
Sony is then doing the thing when I would say Samsung and smart TVs literally they aped what the consoles and what Sony and Xbox are trying to do. Not that they're like, I'm dogging on any of their sales. I'm just saying
J-Dub, it's like it's all the future.
So
it's the future.
It's literally right now.
The future. In the future, Xbox will matter again when it's the cloud and on your phone, and it's the future. It hasn't been the future for a decade. They have done nothing in a decade.
You're fighting a ghost here. You're shadowboxing, and let's put you back to school. Samsung and smart TVs. No, you're sitting here making an argument that I'm definitely not making. The YouTube, the Netflix, all of your apps and television and all that stuff is just an app on your TV now. It literally apes what the Xbox originally and what Sony used to do. Like, Netflix was the biggest, like, installed through the old consoles, especially on the 360 and the PlayStation 3 era. That's when that whole took off. But then TVs, which they tried to push TVs into this 3D TV, and everybody's like, that's stupid. And then essentially they went with, smart TVs. That's what people want. They want, really nice pictures and really nice screens. Turns out it does all these things. That then takes away one of the big selling points. Like, why is the PS2 one of the highest selling consoles of all time to this day? It is the highest, but it's the DVD player.
But the only reason that happened, though, the only reason that, and people keep bringing this up, that's PlayStation. Yes, it is the number one most.
The red herring.
But the only reason is because that generation, the console itself sold for 13 years. Literally sold for 13 years. They produced that console for 13 years. Yeah. No other generation has lasted that long, and no other device has lasted that long, right? So, of course, you won't get to that point. Maybe Nintendo Switch, right? If they keep it around another year or two, it may reach that and surpass it, but your console has to do that. But make no mistake about it, the PS5 is surpassed the PS2 and the PS3 and the PS4 at this particular time. So if we keep on with this trajectory and this console lasts for 10 years, they'll probably reach 155, right? And if it reaches and if it goes longer, but
price.
The only reason PS2 did that was
the only way that
PlayStation
can then double and then double again is in terms of the hitting some kind of massive mass market price, of which, like, their goal is they make money on the sales of the consoles, which is like,
but they do. Like, they did that ever since the first year.
But I'm saying that, like, in order for like PlayStation to really try to continue to keep this level of acceleration, like, that's where usually you see another models come out, which reduces their overall cost, sees their price comes down. And right now, like, especially with inflation and things like that, that's another thing that's pushing and keeping the price from truly falling, because as everything is going up in price, technically these systems are actually getting cheaper, but people are feeling pinched and people are feeling absolutely. Like game. Now, one of the things about technology, going back to Kirk's points, because there is some future technology that when they talk about the next biggest leap in technology, the only two things that come to my mind are AI and with cloud. And so if we're talking about them putting in AI generation chips that are going to help do whatever,
Both
NVIDIA
things that
showing this
people
stuff off.
don't want.
So-
Cloud
so
and AI.
let-
I think that's a generational thing, Kirk, because when you start looking at what Apple's doing with their handheld and the fact that, like, I was talking with 30 last night on his podcast, shout out to 30 and Still Gaming. He plays his xCloud, his Xbox games on his Meta Quest 2, which it's like, yeah, it's all
That's pretty
being
cool.
processed and rendered. And he's like, it's great. I have this ultra massive screen. I'm playing these games, having a great time. And so it's that, I think, where when we talk about the future tech, like there, I think will be a generational divide where people, just like they're saying, I'm never going to go digital. I'm going to have physical media. And then at some point, like there's going to be a hard drawn line in the sand. I think essentially at some point, like, yeah, one of these consoles will, or both, maybe even the PS6 will be an always online console, because they're going to tap into cloud compute to keep costs down. So they don't have to sit here and say, oh, we don't have to put like all of the stuff physically in there, but we're going to make sure we have cloud compute so we can compete.
That's a great point, because I want to go back to what Kirk said when Kirk said no one wants that. Microsoft wants that. And I want to revisit a few great points.
Supply and demand.
Kirk,
Supply and
Kirk,
demand.
Kirk,
There's no
Kirk.
demand.
Kirk, listen here. Okay, so Jay, you brought up a great point, which is that Microsoft's one of the most profitable companies in the world, right? And the gaming aspect of that profit is minuscule. So you have to say, well, what's the core competency of a company like Microsoft? It is cloud infrastructure, it is networking, it is that type of technology. Any business segment internally is going to try to follow that model, subscription service and all of that. So I that's why I think, Brian, you're spot on, and it's easy to read the tea leaves, is because to them, they want that business model to be similar in terms of what gaming is to the rest of the market. And they have so much infrastructure and footprint, they can make that technological leap into the gaming space. It's already everywhere else. I'm a cloud architect.
Sure,
That's
sure,
what
they
I
could
do.
it. They could do it, but we'll get. Here's the thing: they could do it, right? But are gamers partaking now? Like Microsoft hasn't even mastered the art of just creating great games, right? So and then you're looking. No. Listen. And I'm going to be honest. Think about it, right? As a longtime Xbox guy,
Mastered. They should try and do it once.
For the last 2 generations, they have not been consistent in good quality software.
I would agree.
The good trusties, right? The Halo, Gears, and the Forzas have been the only consistent, high quality type things. And even this generation is going downhill, right? This Forza is the lowest.
Horizon
Forza,
5 is incredible. Like they do have
the Horizon series. I can actually see them killing off the Motorsport series, right? It's for whatever reason. They haven't mastered that, and the Microsoft is all over the place in all these different buckets, and these guys come out on the stage. Yeah, we want to go for the game over here and the game over there and the game of this, and we want to do all this stuff and cater to PlayStation and cater to Nintendo. You can't even cater to your base.
Well, Phil Spencer sees their relevancy as a company tied to gaming. And I kind of think he's right. Like, I think as gaming continues to grow and become more endemic to daily life, like it's just a part of what we do. It's on cell phones. I think, again, they want to see that the TV inroad and, the PC potential growth for that market. We see other companies, PlayStation's like, hey, we're going to look more into PC. Now, people are twisting it and saying, oh, they're going to go day and date. Maybe by the time Spider-Man 3 comes out, they'll do day and date, because at that point in time, they've established that digital library loyalty with all the PS5 owners, and there's no risk in somebody being like, well, I'm going to switch to PC for Spider-Man 3. I don't think that would happen. And they're seeing that revenue and saying, we need to go over there because that's a big market. That's a big place to go make money. So I think Microsoft sees that relevancy in gaming being intertwined with cloud, and with that, we're going to be everywhere. Satya said, like, we are everywhere. That's the goal of Microsoft. Gaming is an arm of that, and that's how they maintain their relevancy in the market. That's why it was kind of easy to believe they were going to change it to Microsoft Gaming. I don't think they will, but I'm like, that's so Microsoft to be like, you're not Xbox anymore, you're Microsoft Gaming. Like the ego of their corporate thinking. Yeah. And I think that's how they look at gaming. That's why they've not been good at creative, because they're good at software. Software is not creative, it's utilitarian. And I think that's why a lot of their policies with contracts and the fact that a lot of their great games, they bought them, right? They don't foster creative with look at what they allowed happen to 343 and Halo.
Yeah.
I said yesterday, they should have treated Halo like a Fabergé egg. They should have held it with reverence and protected it and funneled money in studios at it. And instead,
Preach, Lono.
they
Preach,
let
Lono.
the multiplayer launch in a beta. And it's like, what? That's not how
For
you
like a
treat your
year,
big
a
property.
beta for a year.
Right. Imagine if Nintendo did that with one of their big properties, or imagine if God of War Horizon came out and was just a buggy disaster mess, and we learned that half the studio was on contract and leaving. We'd be angry. We'd be like, why would you treat your big valuable property that way? That's why I was so mad about the
That's
last
what Factions was going to be. That's why they
Right.
cut
Well,
it. Because
The Last of Us
it's
port.
damage control. It's brand protection.
The
Yeah,
Last of Us
yeah.
port to PC, I took him to task for that. I'm like, this is not how you treat your property, PlayStation. This is embarrassing. Where's the ownership? They were trying to capitalize on the popularity of the TV show. That was a giant mistake, and I can't see PlayStation making that mistake again. That's why they canceled Factions. But Xbox is just happy to launch Forza Motorsport before it's ready, and the user scores are abysmal because of it. And it's just like, that's my concern. It's like, they own a lot of property and they don't handle it very well. And if they want to start doing this, like taking property over to PlayStation, they better wait a year, because they're going to have to get the games in better state if they want to do it.
I could easily see Xbox ruining all this IP. Like, let me, I don't want that. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. But to your point, Lono, that is a good point. Like, culture wise, they've not yet figured out how to maintain that creative ideal that you need in software development separate from game development. And Sony does that great. Sony has that culture. Nintendo has that culture. Nintendo passes on a culture. They got tons of tradition there too. Microsoft needs to figure that out. But the weird thing is there's such a behemoth, even if they don't. If Call of Duty puts out the same Call of Duty for the next 20 years, that's probably going to make money, right? And it is one of those things where people, like, it's a double-edged sword, their position. They don't necessarily have to prioritize quality or innovation as much as they have to just let's use our existing infrastructure and get our stuff everywhere. That is cloud and all that stuff, which is innovative, but nothing what you're probably going to see from a Nintendo or Sony from games or hardware moving forward specifically.
It's not foolproof because, you know, whether you like Bobby Kotick or not, right, with what was going on over there, they were cranking these games out, and these games were good games, you know, and they kept the revenue coming in, and they switched it up. And now we've had pretty much the heads of all of those studios have left with all of a lot of those developers and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how Call of Duty maintains over the next iteration or two.
Hopefully
But
they're
I
all
can't
leaving
say
with
they.
big old fat paychecks, because they had
parachutes.
well, not just
Yeah.
parachutes, but also like like stock options, and all of a sudden you just got a big old check, especially if you've been taking a part of that. And then you, as a developer who
Hopefully.
says, now I got the money that I want to go make the game that I've always wanted to make but couldn't, like that's where I think we
Immortals
see
of
innovation.
Avium.
Skull and Bones.
Well,
I don't know why, if anybody was thinking that those games are going to be good, because it's just like, okay, I'm going to be over here playing fun games.
well, I'll be honest. Sometimes I ask myself that about developers too. It's like, are you paying attention to the market, to what gamers are actually wanting to play and stuff like that, or are you just making a game that you think that they won't want to play?
It depends
Well,
on publishers. Go ahead, Lona.
We forget
I
how
was
long
gonna
it takes to
say-
make games.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Like, I think people look at Kill the Justice League and they forget,
Yeah.
like, that game was in development for a really long time. And if it would have dropped at, like, 2019 at the height of Fortnite, people would have been like, this is awesome. Well, I also think if it would have been built by Gearbox, people would be worshiping it instead of shredding it, because they're like, this isn't what we wanted from Rocksteady. Like, if that was a Gearbox game, it would be reviewed completely differently. But that's a whole
Well,
side
Gearbox
tangent.
would have
Of
made
course.
that game better too, because they're really good at looter shooters.
Well,
So-
people would have expected the loot table to grind and the simplicity of it. They wouldn't have expected, like, the Rocksteady,
Yeah.
impact system and combat system.
Same
that
thing
they
with
were used.
Bioware and Anthem. I get where you're going
The
with it.
point being that the trends change so fast. I said it last night. Everybody's trying to jump on extraction PvE. Everybody's
Don't do
adding
that.
that to their game. And I'm like, that's the next trend. And guess what? You're going to oversaturate the market.
Yep.
There'll be
Yep.
2 or 3 gold star games that rise, and everybody else will die. And that's the problem with trend chasing. Like, when you look and you're like, well, this is what the market's doing, let's do that. I think that's what The Last of Us Online did. I think they said, we can do that. Our mode is so good and successful. We can go out in the
Oh.
market and do what Fortnite's doing. And as time went on, it was like Bungie took one look at it and said, you don't know what it takes to maintain an ongoing live service game.
Yeah.
And that's why the Helldivers devs are right now scrambling to hire more people, because they went way past expectations. Sony buys them before the summer. Write it down. I guarantee they're going to scoop them up and give them the funding they need, because that game can go.
You know, TikTok was a new idea and a new app and a new platform. So like if Xbox gets lightning in a bottle with one of these ideas, great. But they have a track record of trying stuff and it not working. And I'm not going to bet on or place any stock in anything that they're going to try in the next 5 or more years until I see actual results, because there have been no actual results.
It's good that they try, though, like, because that's one of the things that when it comes down to it, like, Nintendo, you tried. At least you tried. As opposed to like when I hear a lot of gamers complain about the state of game, like, oh, it's just like the big companies, the AAAs are just doing this like the safest possible route. It's like Nintendo's out there like, we're just going to turn motion controls on and see what happens. And then everybody tries to copy it. And then it's like, okay. But J-Dub, what do you think?
I will say this. There's a large number of people out there that Microsoft caters to, and a lot of those people, they will take away different things from this podcast that they had today. There's a lot of people out there that want to be lied to. They want to be led astray. They want to be validated to make. They want to be validated with their years of waiting for greatness and waiting for good things. They want to be comforted in that. Now today, I think Phil, with all the spinning that they did, there's some people going to say, yeah, this is what we wanted, and thank you, Phil, and they're going to take away totally different set of circumstances that we talked about today. And guess what? To those people, kudos to them. Let them, God bless their souls, let them do that. But to everybody else, we've been lied to enough. Like they say, the first time, shame on you, the next time, shame on me, and then on and on and on. And I think we've seen this rabbit hole go down so many times. We're able to, we don't have the filters on. We get to see the BS. We get to actually read the fine line and see exactly what was said. And we talked about that today. Anyway, you guys can catch me on Twitter at JDubCity16, man. I'll try to keep you guys laughing, you know what I'm saying, with some of my banter that I have.
JDub Fake News City.
Big facts.
Lodo.
I just come at this with the ongoing trajectory as a guy that entered this gen excited as an Xbox fan. I bought the Series X first. And if I watch that show back and think about it back as an Xbox fan, they gave me zero confidence in the brand going forward, delivering anything I was hoping for. They've admitted that, yep, we're going to put 4 titles somewhere else with the possibility of more. And then they just basically just puked out a bunch of the same talking points that they've said for years, and then dangled there's going to be this big, huge technical leap in the next gen hardware, which just continues the meme of wait until things get better. As a Series X owner, as somebody that thought that, they're really going to come out here and speak with clarity, I think it lacked clarity. I think, like Jay said, I think a lot of the big time, fully committed Xbox guys, this is just enough to put them back in the saddle and to say, yep, we're on Team Xbox. You guys aren't getting Starfield, like they said, just enough. And that's why I always say it's not what Phil says, it's what he doesn't say. If you really listen carefully. And then he goes and does these interviews with, Verge and everywhere else. And it's just like, it's very, very clear. Microsoft is the captain now. And Phil and Sarah and Booty, they seem like great people. They're real sharp, and I think Phil kept them in the fight. I got respect for that guy for keeping Xbox in the fight all these years. But I think Microsoft walked in the room and said, we're the captain now, and this is phase 1. And I believe there will be a phase 2, and I believe a lot of the big titles will move. I definitely think Blade is already probably slated to be multi-plat. I don't think that there's
they refused to even acknowledge.
Yeah, they won't address it. It's like they won't address the conversation on so many of those titles. And it's my biggest hope is that they do decide to do something with handheld, because I do think that's a compelling offer from Microsoft that would make me be like, oh, I want to get Xbox hardware again. Because right now, after what happened with Series X, and again, she said technical leap, and I'm like, I don't know what that could mean. I hope it's a powerhouse.
Has to be cloud.
I hope they
Yeah.
leave behind the two-tiered system with the S. I just thought that's just been so not helpful. And I think devs are going to continue to look at that. A point I wanted to make when I was talking about nobody's building a digital library on Xbox, third-party developers are going to think about that. You have a culture that doesn't build a library, they use a service. And it's like, do you really want to build games for over there? I think third-party devs are going to look at this messaging and look at this pattern and say, what are we investing in over there if we build a game for over there? What's the point? It doesn't seem like this concrete value offer of power and next gen. It's this weird nebulous thing. I think the PS5 Pro is going to be very winsome to devs, and it's going to really turn the tide in the third-party war. And that's where you're going to see, like you said, games like Grand Blue and stuff, just inadvertent exclusives will continue, I think, going forward.
That's why this guy's a professional. That's
There you go.
you know, every bit of that. Yeah, that's why this guy gets paid the big bucks.
There you go.
Yeah, I second all of that for sure.
Yeah. Well, for me to be clear, I am not team Xbox or PlayStation. I sold my Xbox because I just wasn't using it, but I did like it. I was impressed by the backwards compatibility. I'm team Princess Peach for sure. But no, I mean,
Super Mario Wonder, Super Mario
It's
RPG.
great.
Come on, guys.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
there's a
wonderful.
cadence on Nintendo. Absolutely.
yeah. So to Lono's point about Microsoft being captain, I feel like that was always the case, right? And Phil Spencer did put up a good fight. He did put up a good fight to try to make gaming more than what it was at Microsoft. I just don't see in the long run that truly changing anything. Handheld would be really cool, but I think there's two ways they could go about it. They could go about it the way they are, where they're just letting other OEMs make devices. And REG, I tested that Ally. It was cool, but Windows sucks on a handheld device right now. So if they don't improve that with some type of better mobile Windows experience, that's going to fail. Maybe they enter it themselves with some other device. That could happen. I'd be surprised, but I would definitely try it out for sure. So, I mean, long run is I don't think Xbox consoles are going to blow out anyone in the future, but I would still probably buy Microsoft stock too, knowing that a lot of that is going to come from other aspects, but their business is going to be around for a long time. And to the comment about Blade, I mean, honestly, I'd say I hope Blade is multi-platform for the sake of that game, because one, I love Blade. I hope it's a good game. And I'm a game developer myself. I want game developers to succeed. And the reality is locking yourself into a platform not a lot of people are playing is poor as well. So, I mean, those are my 2 cents. Nothing surprised me out of this at all. And I do think it was a complete waste of time. Not this podcast, but that interview.
I echo that. I felt like that it was a 22-minute nothing burger, that I was the worst case scenario for them. Again, 4 vague games that now we can speculate on what they might be. And then of course, people are going to say, well, if they brought these 4, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What I was wanting from this, because I believe in their vision about games everywhere. I think they're thinking of it and the future in the right way with the right tech, and just basically saying like, hey, every screen is an Xbox. Okay, cool. Why not? Like, that's the same thing. Like, if PlayStation Portal said, hey, we're going to let you have your GeForce Now on this, it becomes an instant buy device for me. But I'm not in the market for single use, products anymore, because I don't have that, that need. I already have something that does those things. I think the PlayStation Portal would be a better device to do the things that I wanted to do, but it still is limited. But all that being said, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Xbox from here on out, because I don't think Xbox fans got anything that they really wanted. And if they did, I would really lean into the copium kind of aspect. From a technological perspective, I think, yes, they weren't going to leave the console market, but what is a console for them in this next technical leap? I think we got a lot of PR and a big nothing burger. And I honestly, I felt like I wasted my time. And at the same time, then going back to Colt Eastwood's, like shocking face and all that, like all these little things of hopium that have been, on the internet. I was like, that was like, I said, what's the worst case scenario? And then while watching it, I go, oh, this is that worst case scenario that I thought that they would do. They'd get up here. They wouldn't really be clear. They have confusing messaging and they look defeated. And I think that's just going to accelerate this into whatever Summer Games Fest tends to be. And I think that's going to be the next kind of check-in point, truly. Like, yes, maybe the Nintendo Direct's next week and they get, Hi-Fi Rush or whatever, which would be great. Bring it. Like, that's what I want. However, I think essentially today was a big waste of time. Not this
They didn't
podcast,
solidify
though.
any confidence in the brand. They didn't shoot back across the bow. Like Phil's statement about, no, it's not Indiana Jones or Starfield. Like, that was it. Out of that entire 22-minute podcast, like, there was nothing else that was noteworthy or really worth talking about. I commend all four of you gentlemen for us being able to actually make some content out of that, because there was just absolutely nothing there. So, like, I think that you're right, Brian. This is the worst case scenario. Like, even if they just said something bold and crazy and they said, yep, a third party, everything, like, that would have been almost better if you had something to say, like you were bringing something to table with a bold new vision. Instead, they were just like, yeah, we have nothing to say, nothing to offer. We're not restoring any confidence. We're not restoring, what our brand messaging and vision is beyond lip service and vagaries and PR speak. See you guys whenever we talk next. And nothing about the community losing their minds has been resolved by this 20-minute or so conversation about random vague stuff. And you guys are going to get Diablo. So forget about all this, please. Go play Diablo.
Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
I will agree with Brute that I am on Team Lasagna as opposed to Team Xbox or Team PlayStation. I think Lasagna is always a good choice, and I like that they put that in chat. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks to the panel for coming in together and giving me some of their time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks to chat spending their time with us today. We're going to wrap up, and I'm going to dismiss these guys. And we thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening, hitting that like button, and hopefully you'll leave a comment or two on the VOD. But outside of that, see you next time.
Epic Loop Radio. Epic Loop Radio.